feel like you're making history?
There's lots of people who could bring down the house.
It's just really, really important that we get to write our future.
UHY LLP is an independent CPA firm. We help our clients address today's evolving business challenges through audit and assurance, tax service, consulting, and more. UHY, the next level of service.
UMES, a leading land-grant HBCU, excels in next-generation agriculture and environmental sustainability. We plant, we grow, we cultivate great minds.
University of Maryland Center for Environmental Science, leading the way on Chesapeake Bay restoration, while guiding our state, nation, and world toward a more sustainable future.
Don't miss this year's Baltimore Jewish Hall of Fame induction ceremony, live streamed on Thursday, May 13th at 7 p.m. Learn about 11 outstanding Baltimoreans who have made their mark in the community. Visit jcc.org/Hall of Fame for details.
State Circle is made by MPT to serve all of our diverse communities and is made possible by the generous support of our members. Thank you.
Connecting Marylanders to their government. This is State Circle.
Good evening. Welcome to State Circle. Coming up tonight, the future of online education. We'll speak with the new president of the University of Maryland Global Campus. But first tonight, solving the problem of bad internet. It holds back students and people working from home. Nancy Amato looks at the digital divide that affects people all over the state.
The internet in today's world has transitioned from a luxury good to a utility.
Andrew Coy is the executive director of the Digital Harbor Foundation, a Baltimore-based nonprofit devoted to increasing connectivity to high-speed internet for those who lack access.
You see health consequences, educational consequences, employment and economic consequences that are all negative if you're on the wrong side of the digital divide.
For some communities, especially in rural areas, the problem is a lack of infrastructure.
The second is about affordability. Some of the cost factors. And then the third is about adoption.
When we look at it, it's not about haves and have-nots. It's about opportunity.
Jonathan Moore is the founder and CEO of Rowdy Orbit, a Baltimore nonprofit dedicated to bringing affordable internet service to under-resourced communities.
When you start to look at, how companies look how they build based on profits and growth. And if that isn't there, then they're not going to invest in it.
Moore believes that communities won't be at the mercy of broadband companies in the near future as Elon Musk and other businesses move ahead and develop some out-of-this-world technology.
With SpaceX, what they've been doing is launching satellites in low-lying orbit. And Virgin America is also doing the same thing. And what they've been able to do is to take that signal that's coming from the low-lying orbit the satellites that are flying around and be able to cast a signal onto planet Earth anywhere on the planet.
Beyond that, Coy says they must also focus their efforts on making sure broadband is within people's means.
They can't make the dollar stretch. Cutting the internet bill is the decision that some people have to make.
Advocates agree closing the digital divide will also require more education and support.
How do you inspire people to use this beyond just for entertainment purposes, but also working with community-based organizations to open up a global world outside of just being on their block?
And with more federal and state funding, along with attention on this pervasive problem, advocates are optimistic about what lies ahead.
The history of redlining, bears ugly fruits. And I think being intentional and open and reflective about that negative history and saying we're going to do something better, is the goal. And to build back better, I think is some of the motto.
I'm Nancy Yamada for State Circle.
Nancy, thank you. Joining us now are Jason Hardebeck, Baltimore City's Director of Broadband and Digital Equity, and Sarah Dahl, General Counsel at Choptank Electric Cooperative. Thanks so much for joining us. Let's begin by just defining terms. Jason, when we're talking broadband, how much data, what are we talking about?
Sure. Well, the FCC has a legal definition for broadband that moves over time. Currently, the legal definition is 25 megabits per second download speed and 3 megabits per second upload speed. That's the legal definition. Practical definition, I think, is, people have different ideas of what broadband means to them. And it really depends on how many people are using it and what you're trying to do.
I may have a little bit of a cluttering problem here in the home office because I was able to find, you guys are too young to recognize this. This is an AOL floppy disk that they used to mail to everybody in America twice a week, I think. And it says on here, now with Turbo Web for even faster internet access. These things, this was like 56 kilobits a second. So what you're talking about, Jason, is, I don't know, 50, 100 times faster than that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think the first legal definition the FCC put was 200 kilobits per second download and upload back in 1996. And so occasionally they will reassess that and it goes up. It usually doesn't go up as fast as people think it should, right? Because as you know, and the pandemic has shown, there are a lot more needs for high-speed internet today than there was even a year ago.
All right, let's bring those needs over to the Eastern Shore. Sarah, for people who aren't familiar with the Choptank Electric Cooperative, you've been in business since the 1930s, supplying electricity, and it looks like you have service territory in parts of every county on the shore. Is that right?
That's exactly right. Choptank Electric Cooperative was formed in 1938 at the same time that most other cooperatives in the country were formed. And the purpose at the time was to serve customers with electric who were not previously served by the other for-profit electric companies. So it wasn't economically feasible for a lot of those big companies to serve the more rural areas of the shore. And that's where the cooperative stepped in to fill that void. And so we have approximately 54,000 members, and we serve the rural portions of all 9 counties of the Eastern Shore on the electric side.
And I guess that mission carries forward to today when you start thinking about broadband.
Exactly. It's the exact same problem today, or at least a very similar problem to broadband, that the more densely populated areas of the shore are served with an internet service provider. Could be Comcast, could be some of the smaller companies on the shore, but we still have a lot of customers on the rural Eastern Shore that don't have access to broadband. And so the cooperative's members have been looking to us for a long time now and asking if there was something we could do to try to help with the broadband problem on the rural shore. And so we recently formed a wholly owned subsidiary called Choptank Fiber. And our goal with Choptank Fiber is to serve every unserved member of Choptank Electric with high-speed internet service in 10 years.
How unserved are people? Does everybody get cable? In other words, can they get cable TV and then internet from the cable company? How about 4G wireless phone service?
It depends. There's a range. We have some of our members that have nothing. Most members can get some form of either satellite internet or they have a Verizon hotspot or something like that. We have a kind of wide range that different people use in Choptank's service area to get the internet. Very few of our more rural members have access to actually fixed broadband, which is what we're offering.
Jason, what are the limitations in Baltimore City? Obviously an urban area, more compact. I'm thinking everybody should be able to get something from the cable company and potentially 4G, 5G, service from a cell company.
Certainly the physical infrastructure constraints are less challenging in an urban area, right? As Sarah pointed out, right? It's the physical distance and geography and the density is less exciting from a market perspective. So Baltimore does have better coverage that way, but affordability is a huge aspect of this as well. And that's where a lot of the challenges have been, is that it just hasn't been, the market forces alone are not sufficient to really make sure that everybody has the same access to quality broadband. We we are starting to look at this as critical infrastructure as opposed to what, in past years has been more of a luxury, which has just been left up to the private sector to solve.
Yeah, back in the days, we used to use broadband for Netflix. Now it's
Still do.
work. I mean, yeah, right. But during the day, hopefully, it's more about
Right.
work and school work.
Yes.
So, from a city standpoint, what are the solutions? What are you focused on? Does it make sense to have street level, neighborhood level Wi-Fi?
All potential options are being looked at. As Sarah pointed out, I mean, I think this is something that the city is now looking at as, something we have to take seriously from a public infrastructure standpoint. What can we do to help close the digital divide, right? Which is really the gap between people who can take advantage of the digital economy and those who can't. And physical access is just one component of that. And that could be a number of things. It could be free public Wi-Fi. It could be opening up city infrastructure, fiber and conduit, to enable more choices, right, for consumers. It could be potentially the city becoming a provider itself, a provider of last resort, if that's what it takes. So right now, everything's on the table.
Sarah, on the Eastern Shore, is this what they would call a last mile problem? In other words, is there a good internet backbone along major highways or wherever you access it, and the problem is getting from there out to somebody's more rural house?
For the most part, I would say yes. We have various sources of that backbone fiber. Choptank Electric owns a fair amount of backbone fiber. That's part of what gives us an advantage as we step into this business, that we already have some existing assets in place that we've used for communications on our electric system. So that helps us, but it also serves as middle mile fiber that potentially another provider could lease from us or attach to do that last mile problem. And then there's others, like, for instance, the Maryland Broadband Cooperative has been around for a long time, and they're primarily middle or exclusively middle mile. So it is a last mile problem, but that last mile sometimes is a farm lane to one house. And so that person, kind of a contrast to what Jason said, that person may or may not be financially disadvantaged. It's just a matter of a provider actually being willing to go down that farm lane. And that's where Choptank Electric, as a cooperative, our business model is very different, and we're able to finance things over a much longer term. And we're completely not for profit. Any so-called profit that we make in a given year gets allocated back to our member customers. So that business model allows us to do things over a much longer time frame and to do things at the absolute minimum cost. So we're hoping that the combination of all of those factors helps us to solve that last mile problem.
You're talking about physically pulling a fiber optic cable down the farm lane,
yes,
digging a trench or hanging it from a telephone pole, and
yes.
And all of a sudden, once you have fiber optic, you have all the bandwidth in the world. You can have gigabit internet, I guess. What's the reaction from the first people who signed up?
Well, we actually had a really neat story that our very first broadband customer, complete coincidence, happened to be the granddaughter of possibly our first, definitely one of our first Choptank Electric cooperative members. And so her grandfather's farm was one of the very first places to be electrified. And now she was our first customer to get broadband. And she couldn't believe it. I mean, she lives not very far outside of town on a major street. And she's talked to different providers over the years who have just never been willing to provide high-speed service there. And so she was amazed, even just pulling up Google, at how quickly it loaded. It's actually been very exciting just with these first couple connections that we've had.
I can imagine. It's a whole new world. So to speed this up, both the physical barriers, the equity barriers to getting good broadband to students and business people and just residents around the state, from both of your perspectives, what could the state do to accelerate things?
So one thing the state is doing, right, just announced the Office of Rural Broadband is being as expanded in scope to cover statewide broadband. And government has allocated $300 million in American Rescue Plan funds that came to the state for that. So there's a number of different uses over those, I think, next 5 years or so. The office is charged with to both support physical infrastructure projects, both in rural and municipal areas, and then a lot of funding to going towards the digital literacy side, navigators, other training programs to also tackle the adoption side. So, I mean, they're doing an awful lot. And I think the other opportunity by looking at it statewide is it gives us an opportunity to start collaborating amongst different areas and learning from each other. And, you know, the nature of the internet is connecting everyone, right? So it makes sense that we view the state in the same way, where we can start to leverage each other's assets and resources to do so.
Sarah, will much of that 300 million make it onto the Eastern Shore?
We hope so. I mean, there's definitely, I think that the pandemic has really cemented what a lot of people already knew. If you had school-age children, or if you had a job where potentially you could work from home. And so I think there is growing attention, certainly as a result of the pandemic, and additional funds coming from the federal and state government. We know that Governor Hogan is taking it seriously, and we're working closely with the Office of, formerly or currently, I'm not sure, the Office of Rural Broadband, or the State Office for Broadband. And so we've been working closely with them, and also with our counties on the Eastern Shore, to try to see what kind of public-private partnerships might be available there, because these county commissioners are really taking it seriously. They've been working on this for a long time, but at the end of the day, on the shore, it's an infrastructure problem and a money problem that, you know, we're trying to kind of do what we can, since infrastructure and construction is a huge part of what we do as an electric company. We're trying to leverage that and work with the counties and the state and the federal government to try to speed up that process.
Sarah Dahl, Jason Hardebeck, thank you both for connecting with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Now, our newsmaker this week is Gregory Fowler, the president of the University of Maryland Global Campus. Dr. Fowler, thank you for being with us.
Thank you for the invitation.
Let's begin by introducing or reintroducing UMGC to our viewers. It's not a new institution, but it's a relatively new name.
Yes, in fact, the university's been around since 1947. Next year, we'll be celebrating our 75th anniversary. As part of the work that's going to be going forward, we're going to hopefully be able to do exactly what you just said, introduce people to this idea of University of Maryland Global Campus, which is the largest public online institution in the country. So very much tied to accessibility, affordability, and open access to the citizens of Maryland, and also very much tied to serving our military around the world. So they're give or take about 170 locations located throughout the United States and around the world, primarily in Asia and Europe.
Enormous institution, successful institution under the former name University of Maryland University College. You're new, but what does the new name Global Campus mean to you?
So it's certainly one of the things that I talk a lot about is trying to make sure we meet our students wherever they are around the world. One of the things we did on Maryland Public Television a couple of years ago was the Over There documentary that came out in 2018, talking about some of the origins and early days of the institution, when a lot of our faculty spent time overseas in places like Korea, and sometimes in other places, deserts and other things like that. So what we're trying to do is think about what does the university need to look like to reach students wherever they are moving forward. That could be certainly on the military basis, but around the globe, certainly here in the country, in different ways that meet the students' needs of today.
You took over as president in January in the middle of a pandemic. I guess because so much of what you do is online, you were maybe less impacted than other institutions?
Well, it was different. As I said, remember, we certainly have the military students that are overseas. And a lot of them, of course, because of financial aid requirements, have to take their classes in some type of face-to-face environment. So we have been working our way through how to help those students who had to go home in various places do the work they were trying to do. And also thinking about what is going to be the future of online education across the country. So we certainly, I feel like we do a pretty good job of online, but the future of this is going to be a little bit different. certainly with all of these students who have been online in high school, the faculty in colleges who had to do this work. What's going to come next is going to be a very different thing outside of the pandemic, I believe.
In what way?
Well, it's once you introduce this genie is not going back into the bottle. And just as you saw with other industries, some of the ones I like to cite are people probably listen to more music now than they ever have, but they do so differently than they did when we had back, I'm going to date myself a little bit here, with cassettes or records. Certainly the same thing is true for the news industry. We still probably get more news than ever, but you don't necessarily see it in the ways we would have seen it when we were children. With higher education, well, now that we are dealing with this idea of virtual education, the Zoom that we're doing right now, the technology is going to require us to think about learning in different ways. And now that this has been introduced, I suspect it's going to be different moving forward for everyone.
You know, I think we interviewed your predecessor a couple of years ago, and I think I may have made the point that teaching young people to learn remotely, maybe as high school freshmen, would be incredibly valuable, because once you get good at that, and correct me if I'm wrong, I mean, it's a specific skill set to being an attentive and successful online learner. But once you've got that, I mean, the world is yours.
Well, it's certainly true that when you're dealing with the technology, kids have probably more access to it than anyone, but not necessarily for learning. And if we can get them more comfortable with some of these vehicles moving forward, it will open up new opportunities to any number of people. You know, one of the big things we spend a lot of time talking about are equity issues, and being able to reach students who have different types of circumstances, whether it's time where they can't necessarily be in a class at a given time, whether it's access to technology. If we do this well moving forward, we will allow more students to gain those skills, abilities, the knowledge that they're going to need to succeed. We've got to introduce that to them far earlier than we have done in the past.
And you have a highly diverse institution. I looked at your fact sheet online. What programs are people most interested in? Where's the growth? Where's the demand pulling you in the future?
Well, certainly you're going to have issues and going to have things in areas like criminal justice, some of the traditional areas of business. But the big ones are going to be in the ones you would think about from an online experience: cybersecurity, technology, information technology, healthcare administration. A lot of us, as you know, have dealt with doctors through virtual experiences over the last period of time. I suspect that the healthcare industry will be trying to figure out how do we do more of that as we continue to move forward as well. Same thing is going to be true as we look at information security, the virtual experiences that we're putting out there. All of these are going to be the jobs of the future.
Your vision, you've had a few months on the job, you've been experienced in the field before, obviously. What do you hope to do there over the next few years?
So I've got three things, and the first is tied very much to the things we've been talking about. How do you go about strengthening the core, figuring out what do we need to improve from the things that we have been doing, whether it is what's the next generation of Zoom or some of the other technologies that allow us to deal with our accessibility and affordability parts of our mission. How do we get better at doing the things that we have been doing to help more students do those types of things? Second, if we get really good at those types of things, how do we continue to expand our reach? I often say that education is the one thing that we believe can really change the lives of just about anyone. And if we have the ability to make that education available to more people, we can truly serve our mission most effectively moving forward. And finally, of course, to think about how do we partner with different types of organizations and institutions. As you know, we are only one of the 12 institutions in the university system of Maryland. So how do we help the other institutions who aren't necessarily trying to do the same things that we're trying to do with our mission, but also still have to deal with new technologies? How do we help them do those types of things? And how do we also partner with different types of groups and organizations? So you may know about, for example, our partnership with Amazon and others around the country when it comes to partnering with corporations, other types of community colleges. All of these are going to be things that may not be quite the traditional education where you go and get an associate's degree or a bachelor's degree, but that you get a degree or credential in some other type of area. So short-term learning, you may have heard the term micro-credentials, nano-credentials, certificates. These are the types of things where students won't necessarily go back for full long-term programs, but we'll go back to try to get some new skill. And we want to make sure we're really good at that.
You're working with Amazon on their employees?
certainly with their employees. So we have a number of different partnerships with Amazon. One of them is helping their employees at the sites around the country. And another one of them is going to be very much tied to some of the work we're doing in places more locally as we move forward.
Online education has all sorts of players. I mean, you have some public institutions, you have some for-profit private enterprises. How does that competition go? Say there's a person out there wants to get a full degree, an MBA, master's in something else. How do you compete? How do you compare on price and other factors?
Well, I think the big thing that we try to make sure we do first and foremost is make sure that we support the students through the areas where they're going to struggle. The biggest thing that students struggle with doesn't tend to be actually the content. The intro to psych course that you see here may not necessarily content-wise be that different, but when students start to struggle, how do the institutions deal with the support for those types of things? So when we look at our comparisons, what we try to think about is what are the things that we're going to bring to the table to identify the places that students are going to struggle? And also, what are the things that work when it comes to helping them make it through those types of things? So completion in those areas are going to be a big part of what we're looking at, more so than just price on those types of things. Academic quality, huge thing for us. So how do we think about the outcomes and making sure that the subject matter experts and the faculty that we put in front of our students are the best for the things we're trying to do is another thing that I think will continue to separate us from some of the other people that we're looking at.
What do you need? Tough time to be asking for anything in terms of budgets and the whole university system, but is there anything that would help you accelerate the mission? You're probably unique in that you're not going to ask for a new football stadium.
True. I think that, again, going back to the big things that we're going to be looking at are how do we know when students are going to struggle? So the infrastructure and tools that help us with those types of things, or the types of areas where students struggle with things like mental health. One of the big issues that you're seeing on a lot of colleges right now. If anything, the pandemic has only exacerbated things like anxiety, some of the worries that students have in other areas, paired with, of course, the struggles of having the family at home and trying to cope with COVID at this time. So the things we're going to be looking for in the future are tools that are going to help us help those students when they struggle with those types of things, or to help us with those equity issues that I mentioned. How can we make access available to more students who have not historically been successful? So that type of infrastructure is far more important to us than, say, a stadium or anything else like that.
That was Dr. Gregory Fowler, president of UMGC, and that is State Circle for this week. Thanks for watching and have a good night.
This program was made by MPT to serve all of our diverse communities.
Did you start your college degree but for some reason never finished it? Well, the Maryland Higher Education Commission wants to give you money that can help you finish what you started. Experience the thrill of being handed your college degree after giving up that dream years ago. It's possible, and MHEC is here to help. To learn more about the Near Completer Grant, go to mhec.maryland.gov.
These types of technologies have been in development for a very long time. What you're seeing also is unprecedented in just the network of collaboration. They're all hands on deck because the situation is so dire. But no part of the clinical trial trajectory of this vaccine's safety and effectiveness was compromised. We are eliciting really, really good and high-level immunity, and we're hopeful for the long-lasting effects of that immunity.
Tonight on MPT.
Next time on Midsummer Murders.
I'm Jamie. You must be the boss's wife.
Barnaby has a new sergeant.
He talks too much.
And a new case.
Who would use a tank as a murder weapon?
The army is about to turn the village over.
Due to be